The problem with AI is that it tends to do things extremely convincingly. So the other day, I used the AI to create a list, and then I looked at it quickly, and I was like, oh, it looks great, and I sent it to a colleague. And I said, hey, look at the list. I mean, it's really nice. I mean, it was able to pick up new stuff. And then, I sent it to him by email. And then I started to look more at the list, and I'm like, I just did it by email. But it was well done and so convincing. And I think this is the biggest problem with a lot of AI at the moment, is that it still hallucinates quite a lot in very convincing manner. Where it accelerates your workflow, it's in the production of information. Where it slows your workflow is that you need to spend more time reviewing things.
Learn about the newest digital pathology trends in science and industry, meet the most interesting people in the niche, and gain insights relevant to your own projects. Here is where pathology meets computer science. You are listening to the Digital Pathology Podcast with your host, Dr. Alexandra Zhurov.
Welcome, Digital Pathology Trailblazers. Today's episode is going to be about AI in drug development. AI in, drug discovery and drug development. AI for drugs. And my guest is my former colleague, Thibault Geoui. Welcome, Thibault. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thanks, Alex, for having me.
And Thibault, you are also a podcast host. Your podcast is Tech and Drugs, and you have interviewed pretty prominent people in the pharma space, like individuals from Ginkgo Bioworks, Tim Hochter, and Dov Gertz, who are, everybody who Googles them is going to see what kind of names these are. So before we start with you, and I'm going to ask you about your background in a second, I'm just going to set the stage. So I'm still at Charles River Laboratories, and this is where we were colleagues for some time. And we cover drug development. I would say we cover it from a little bit of a different angle. I'm very much focused on the digital pathology and how digital pathology can enable that. You cover more broader the AI angle. So let's start with you. Give us a little bit about your background.
Okay, I'll try to be short. So stop me if I start to talk for too long. But okay. I like to talk.
You have a cool story. So go ahead and.
Yeah, so I'm a scientist by training. I guess like most people in our circle.
But what kind of scientist?
I'm a structural biologist, so a mix of biochemistry, biophysics. I've done my PhD on the X-ray crystallography of the Epstein-Barr virus of some proteins. So when I did my PhD, we had structural proteomics program. So we were taking all the proteins from the Epstein-Barr virus and trying to solve as many as possible. So I did my PhD in France, in Grenoble. It was such a cool lab because in my backyard we had a synchrotron. So I don't know if you're familiar with synchrotron, but it's like
I don't even know what that is. What's a synchrotron?
It's the biggest scientific instrument in the world, save for a particle accelerator that you have in Geneva that is like...
Oh, that's this CERN thing that sends electrons...
So it's like CERN in smaller. Like CERN is 27 kilometer. Mine was just 1 kilometer.
So you had the baby version of it.
Yeah, I had the baby version, and the CERN, it's accelerating particles. And a synchrotron, it's different. It's, you have electrons. And then when the electrons are taking a turn, they emit X-rays. So it's a bit like, think about the X-rays when you go to the doctor, where you have like a small X-ray machine. This one is like 1 billion times stronger. And you can do all sorts of really cool things with that. And essentially, the way I would describe it is it's like a giant microscope. But the problem is that, the smaller you want to go, the bigger the instrument. So, when you have a microscope, you can see pretty tiny stuff. I mean, with electron microscope, actually, you can see really, really tiny stuff. But at least when I was doing my PhD, the only way to see things at the angstrom level, so like 1/10 of a nanometer, was to use X-ray crystallography. So with X-ray crystallography, you can have like a an atomic resolution structure of a protein. Why do you want to do that? You can ask me. Well, if you know what something looks like, then you can start to understand, make a link between the shape and the function, the structure and the functions. You will identify cavities in the protein where you can specifically design a drug, and just like something not scientific at all. It just looks beautiful. One of the things that drew me to that is that I really like, because sometimes you work on when you do biology, most of the time you have a picture of a gel with a pen, it's black and white.
I did PCR for my PhD.
Yeah. So
boring.
PCR or SDS page, and you get lots of lines, and then you're super happy when one line is like a little bit below the other one. So it's a bit boring, when you get a protein structure. It's beautiful. You have lots of colors. You can animate them. So this part is not the scientific part, but I was kind of drawn to the beauty of it. And the other thing is that when you enter a synchrotron, it's like being in a spaceship. I mean, it's crazy. It's like it's like you were in Star Trek. So I think like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a cosmonaut. I think like a lot of people, or lots of people who turned out to be scientists, who were. Actually, I'm quite claustrophobic, so I was discussing with my wife today. Yeah, I was discussing with my wife today. We were talking about what kid wants to do in the future. I said, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut and technician, like claustrophobic. So I'm like, so then I went and did something else. Before my PhD, I was convinced I wanted to be like a scientist for the rest of my life. I wanted to be a professor, and during my PhD, I was teaching. I had like a part-time teaching assistant job, and after 3 years of doing intense research and intense teaching, I realized I didn't really want to be a professor anymore. And although I love science,
that's okay.
Yeah, no, I know. But I think there is a bit of social pressure that if you do a PhD, you get to do a postdoc, and then going out of science, it's like I should not say
like
that
you wasted time.
But but it's not only that. I mean, it's a public podcast, so it will be on record, but it's a bit like a mafia. So, you're in a family. You can't leave the family when you're in science. So,
I know.
So yeah, I did, but I still wanted to stay in a scientific field. So I went to work for companies that are
I felt the
scientists.
same way. I never wanted to be in academia, with like all respect to the research that they're doing, because of the dynamics. And it felt such a political environment to me. And then I realized that like any organization is going to be a political environment to one extent or another. This is how like people self-organize. But this was my main driver not to do academia, because the currency are your papers. And I'm like, that's invented currency, like citations, and you do bend over backwards or whatever the saying is to like publish. And anyway, that's a philosophical discussion, but I had that feeling as well when I did my PhD. I thought, I think many people,
I think many people, like out of all the people I was, in my master and then PhD, I don't know, maybe 10% or 5% ended up actually getting, a tenure track. A lot of them, went through, like three postdocs, and then at some point they either got a job or, an academic job, or actually left for the industry. And then, I think I realized quite quickly, I don't want to follow this path, because I don't want to leave because I can't do it. I want to live on my own term. But then it's not, doing something by default, but I was like, no, I want to do something that I will really like. And also explore something, what during my PhD, I had no idea what people with a PhD in structural biology on viruses can do in outside of academia. So my first job that I landed was with a company called QIAGEN. So people in the lab know QIAGEN, like they do consumable instruments, diagnostics, all sorts of stuff for scientists. I worked with their product. I like them. I was like, hey, I like their products. I know their products. So why not working with them? So I worked with them for 5 years. I was a product manager. And then I learned tons of stuff. I really liked it. But then someone one day contacted me, a recruiter, and said, hey, I have this job at Elsevier, the publisher. My first reaction was like, I don't want to work for them, sure. And they were like, hey, wait a moment, it's for Elsevier, but it's in the life science data and analytics team. It's about data. And that was if I recall, in 2011. So 2011, was quite a long time before we started at that time we were talking about big data. I didn't really know anything about that, but I was like, hey, it sounds cool, and I think it's the future. I didn't really know why, but then I went there and actually stayed 12 years. I've done so many things. I started in marketing, then moved in digital product management, in strategy and innovation. So essentially what we were doing there is taking data, extracting data from unstructured content. So what is unstructured content? Essentially, you take a publication and you extract the data. In the publication, you might have something that says protein A binds to protein B and has a role in a certain disease. But when it's in a text, it's all over the place. So you take that and you put it in a database, and then you build a search engine on top of it. And depending on who the search engine is for, if it's for a chemist, you will design it in such a way that you can grow a molecule, because chemists like to grow stuff. If it's for biologists, and you need to have text, and you need to make it simple because they don't like to use Boolean operator and things like that, because sometimes they don't really know how it works. If it's for pharmacologists, you will have another way of designing it. So it was really cool because it was still super scientific. It was in a field where, for some reason, I had this intuition that it would become important. And then over time, it became more and more important because we started with a search engine. Then we started to create a data product where people could use the data to actually train models. At some point, we at the very beginning of the GPTs and the LLMs, we had a project where we worked with AI studio to create our own AI products. And one of the things that I liked is that it touched on so many areas of science and drug discovery and development, and I found it fascinating. And for me, that was one of these happy accidents in a career where you decide to take something where you're not really sure if it's the right thing to do, but it ended up being really defining for me because then that's how I started to be in the field of data, which I think now is definitely for me, that's the best, the best place to be in our industry. After Elsevier, actually, that's when we worked together. I was at Charles River, and Charles River was, in many ways my dream job, because at the time I reported to the CIO, we notified to the CSO, and the job was really to look across all of research and say, look at how can we use technology to accelerate what we did at Charles River. Unfortunately, it didn't last for very long, because I think I arrived in the company when not only the company but the industry as a whole was going through a bit of turmoil, and at some point there was a reduction in force, and I lost my job, which was something that I was so afraid of that it will never happen. That was the first time in my life I lost a job. But I mean, that's a discussion we had separately. I had done a lot of work online. I was kind of blogging, writing on LinkedIn daily for a couple of years already. So I had quite a lot of visibility in the industry. And then, for some time, I started my own business. I started the podcast, as you said, taking drugs. Then I got a few clients, and one of these clients is the company that I'm working with now, who asked me, okay, do you want to join and start the pharma practice? And now I'm working for an innovation and engineering company. Again, something very different, but really cool, because again, you touch on so many different aspects of our industry. It's very technology and innovation focused, and it's really about solving interesting and important problem. And it's still, it's still very much focused on how can we help organization, work faster, better, be more efficient, more innovative, using this mix of technology and science. And for the past 15 years, I've been at this intersection of how can technology help with doing better science. And that's, regardless what I will do in the future, that's a place where I want to work. It's intersection of technology and science, because I think that, when you bring those two things together, especially now, and we talk about AI, I think this is the most interesting thing that ever happened to our industry. So that's my
and you're
the short version of my story.
That was, I think, the longest intro I had on the podcast, but we keep it.
Sorry.
No, but because it's, I love it because it shows like how many different paths can a scientist take. And also that then scientists from different angles, different areas meet, how we met at the same job, right? And the data and technology theme also shows very much in your LinkedIn content. So whoever is not following you, I'm going to leave the link to follow you on LinkedIn. I love the insights that you give from publications, from what's happening with AI in drug discovery and development. I want to bring us back to this topic. Let me go through what drug discovery and development funnel looks like. Because a lot of people think of drug discovery, drug development. When they think of drug discovery and drug development, they think about the last stages, the clinical research, and then approved drugs that a doctor can prescribe, right? And there's a lot more before that. So when you look at the drug discovery and development funnel and the number of candidate compounds, so like potential molecules that could become a drug, you start with the basic research, and the numbers vary depending like what kind of image you Google and what kind of source you look at. But let's say the basic research, we're going to have 20,000 compounds. Then we go to stage 2, drug discovery. We're going to reduce it to 5,000 compounds. It can be more or less. And then only we're going to go to preclinical research, which is where I sit at the contract research organization where I work at Charles River Laboratories. This is where you do work on animals. Only then, out of those 250 compounds that made it to the preclinical research, because all the rest got discarded, you take 5 to clinical research, and out of those 5, maybe you get 1 approved. These are all the different levels where you can apply AI. And what's your take on that? Where is it being currently applied? Where is it not being currently applied? And let's start the discussion on AI and drug discovery and development.
So I think this picture almost misses one box at the very top, because before you even have like a compound and everything, there is a lot of fundamental research that happens even before entering into pharma. So I'll take a popular example now. If you look at the weight loss drugs, like the GLPs.
Yes, GLP-1.
Like the typical thing that you will read online is that developing a drug takes 10 to 12 years, it will fail 95% of the time, and then it will cost $2 billion. So let's keep those numbers in mind.
Yeah, that is always why are drugs so expensive? Oh, because the research and development costs so much, so they have to recover the cost. This is like the standard answer why it's so much.
Yeah.
We can agree or disagree, and it's multifaceted, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
But even this picture, I think, is now evolving, because there was a paper recently from the same author that gave the $2 billion cost, and there was a recent paper when they updated it. They said, hey, actually, if you look at the largest 16 or 17 pharma company, it's not $2 billion on average, but it's $6 billion. So, the larger pharma company. Yeah, but that's the thing which is super interesting. The larger the pharma company, actually, the least efficient they are, and the more costly they are. So that's another thing we can talk about. And then if you look at the very top, actually, like the basic research that happens in academia. So if you look at, I'm sure I'll get the date wrong, but I'll try to get at least the ballpark figure. The very first work that eventually led to the development of the GLP inhibitor, so the weight loss drugs, the drugs for against diabetes, started in the 70s. So it was essentially finding, something which is involved in mice, in regulating appetite, started in the 70s, when they identified some receptors and some peptides in the 80s. And then I think in the 90s, they're like, maybe this thing could be druggable. And then at some point, that landed into pharma. But there was like 30 years of basic research done in academia before this got into a stage where pharma was like, hey, we can make a drug from that. And then it took like 15 years to actually take this and turn it into a drug. So now, where is it that AI can be used or is being used? I would say everywhere in this pyramid, at different level of intensity and with different level of success. I think a lot of they are quite no-brainer use case. A lot of time that researchers spend is trying to find information. Going through literature. If you remember during COVID, I think in 1.5 years there were something like 50,000 publications published on COVID. A lot of it was absolute garbage, but then if you have a Google alert saying, "Hey, tell me whenever there is a COVID publication," then every day you get hundreds. How do you read that? How just reading the title, not even the title and abstract, but just the title of 50,000 stuff takes a lot of time. So if you can have AI helping you, filter things and tell you, okay, this is important, this is not, and then actually summarize things, extract some information. That's already a huge amount of time saved. And then there are plenty of
So this is something actually that it doesn't have to be in drug development. Anybody can leverage that right now. So I have an alert, obviously, for digital pathology and AI, and I have specific rules in Perplexity. Okay, it has to be relevant because this and that. So that's something that that people can, my trailblazers who are listening to it right now, can implement.
And then now you can be you can start to be really sophisticated with those tools. I mean, Perplexity is great. If you use Claude, I mean, you can even build agent and connect things with different tools and tell me if I have search this site, that if things meet some criteria, that send me an alert, and then you can even write a summary. I mean, I've seen people building really, really interesting stuff with agent, and that's the thing. You don't have to be a coder now. You can do things. You can just describe what you want, and then you will be able to pretty successfly get meaningful information. So I think this is no-brainer. This is something that works really well. That is being used now. Now, if you move more in the early discovery, identifying targets, designing drugs. So these are some of the popular examples of using AI. Combing through a lot of experimental data, doing analysis. So I said I did my PhD in structural biology. So it took me 4 years to solve the structure of a protein. And in 2024, Demis Hassabis and John Jumper from DeepMind, they released AlphaFold. And AlphaFold is a model that can take the sequence of a protein and give a structure which is, almost indistinguishable from what you will do when you will have from experimental data. So of course, there is always value in doing the experiment, but in a few minutes, you get something which is almost as good and completely usable in the context of research. Of course, there are tons of caveats. It doesn't necessarily work for everything, but I think the important thing is that it took us 50 years to get 170,000 protein structure using experiment, and now we have 200 or 300 million that we've done since AlphaFold was released. So it's been an incredible tool in research. So it hasn't solved drug discovery and development, because drug discovery and development is not just having a structure, but it's a very important piece where people used to spend a lot of time. So there is this. Then we have tons of tools now. Once you have a structure, to also design a molecule and propose a molecule. Because if you look at, so I'm not going to talk about antibodies, but if you just think about the chemical space of drug-like small molecule. So what do I mean is, a chemical molecule that has the characteristic of a drug. There is 10 to the power of 60 drug-like molecule. So that's a chemical space. So just 10 to the power of 60 is so big that it's difficult to even comprehend how big it is. So just to give you two brackets, if you were to count every grain of sand on Earth, it's 10 to the power of 25. And every single atom in the universe is 10 to the power of 80. So 10 to the power of 60 is a pretty big
It's
number.
a lot.
So
oh my goodness.
let's be clear, if there is no way on Earth that you can synthesize 10 to the power of 60 molecules and try all of them, you can't even compute them. I mean, it's so big that even in a computer, you can't represent all of them. But the number of molecules that you can design in a computer is several order of magnitude greater than what you can actually make, physically. So if you can synthesize them and then you have the shape of your target, then you can, you can design in silico a number of potential molecules. Then if you continue, down the line, so now you have a molecule or several molecules, you can start to predict, okay, will those molecules be demonstrate efficacy? So efficacy is, does it do what it's supposed to do? If you have something that is supposed to, cure, trigger weight loss or cure a headache, if it does it, then it demonstrates efficacy. That's one thing. And then the other thing that Charles Weaver does a lot is it toxic?
It safe?
So, exactly. Yeah, is it safe? So yeah, is it safe, meaning not toxic? So if I give it to you, will you have a heart problem? Will you cure your headache, but then you have a heart attack? Well, that's not a great molecule. I mean, it could be so efficacy, but then it's toxic. You don't want that. So again, here there are plenty of AI models where you can have prediction. It's not yet perfect. Let's be clear. I mean, for a lot of those things, people are like, you know what? I'm not going to take a drug that was just tested in silico. I still want, with everything we say around reducing animal experiment, we are still at this stage where we still want to check in animals and then with what we call NAMs, alternative ways of testing, advanced methodology, whether those molecules are safe. But then in silico methods are playing an ever greater role. Then when you move to the clinical phase in clinics, AI is starting to play a bigger and bigger role. I think it's not as advanced or developed as the discovery and preclinical phase, but there are plenty of use cases in clinics. Like, for instance, how do I select which patient is the right target patient? What are the exclusion criteria? And then a lot of the clinical phase are, almost like a supply chain problem. How do I send things at the right place? How do I select the right hospital? How select the right principal investigator that has a good track record of doing things? All those things. Then you think about, in the preclinical phase and in the clinical phase, there is tons of regulatory documentation, and here AI is used a lot. Novo Nordisk, they made it public months ago, but they were able to reduce, from several weeks, maybe 5 weeks to, a couple of days, the time it took to have first good draft of regulatory documentation using AI. So that's also something where it's used. And then, of course, after that, there are the commercial phase and the pharmacovigilance phase. So commercial phase, it's pretty obvious what it is. It's selling the drug, identifying the right patient population, the right GPs, the right commercial strategy. But that's something that interests. Quite similar to what happens in many industries. So I think here a lot of AI that has been developed for commercializing any asset can be reused in pharma. One thing, though, that is quite specific to the pharmaceutical industry is the pharmacovigilance phase, which is once a drug is in the market, since you give it to a much bigger population than what was in the clinical phase, of course, you will have some adverse event that you couldn't catch in the clinical phase. Clinical phase might have several thousand people taking a drug. So, but imagine there is a serious side effect that happened only in 1% out of a million, then you will not be able to catch it. So pharmacovigilance, essentially, it's once a drug is in the general population, if there is a problem, you need to be able to detect it. But detecting it is quite challenging because it's being reported in many ways, either in the publication or doctors will have, if they see a patient taking the drug and they notice a specific adverse event, they will have to report it. Here you can use AI also to detect signals. So, yeah, I think, of course, I haven't been exhaustive, but there are so many areas now where AI is being used. But, the challenge remains, like we still, if you look at the FDA approval, every year, on average, you have like maybe 45 or 50 drugs that are approved by the FDA. We haven't seen yet an impact of AI on FDA approval. One number I always like to use to put things in perspective is that there are approximately 24,000 known diseases. 14,000 are rare disease, which means in the US, a rare disease is when you have 1% out of 200,000, which has the disease. We have something like 4,000 approved drugs. And of course, 4,000 approved drugs doesn't mean against 4,000 disease, because you have 10 drugs sometimes for the same disease. So maybe it's 4,000 disease. And then the drugs that are really curative, meaning you take the drug, you're cured, maybe like 200. So, at the rate at which we are approving drugs today, it will take us another 500 years until we cure all diseases. That's kind of where we are.
We still have a job for some time. If you're working in drug development, there's still a job. You know what? One theme, you cited or you explained an application in each phase of the funnel. The theme that keeps coming up is scaling what we would do manually, right? Scaling the work on protein crystals, scaling logistics of a clinical trial. But I don't know, are we like successful with this scaling? If there's, we still have the same number of approvals, but does FDA get more submissions? Let's maybe talk about a success case. Is there somebody who does this well? And I remember, you posted a LinkedIn post about 95% of people not seeing any return on investment on using AI, and then 5% actually seeing exponential crazy returns on investment because they're doing it right. So it's not that AI is not working. It's that we're not working well with AI. So who's working well with AI in the drug development space?
So first of all, the paper that you're citing, it's called the MIT NANDA study. I guess you can put the link. And it was not specifically for the pharmaceutical industry, but it was really about generative AI, not even, like all type of AI, because, we tend to think about AI, we think about LLMs and generative AI, but it's more than that. But it was really the case of generative AI and companies implementing generative AI, and they were like, we bought a license to ChatGPT, gave it to all of our employees, and we don't see return. Like, yeah, sure. I mean, it's not because you give a tool to everyone that they will know how to use it, and that it's well implemented in your processes. And give me all the tool of a car mechanic, I won't be able to fix my car. Because I don't know how to do it. And I think it's the same with AI. I was talking to a company founder recently, and he was telling me something which was really interesting. He said, we were talking about agents, kind of the next stage of the most modern way of using AI. And he said, company founders that are like agentic native, like the most recent founders that are really deep into agent, they think completely differently as normal company founder. And what he meant by that is that if you look at imagine you're like a senior executive with 35 years of leadership experience. You're being called to lead a new company, so you will think about your company structure, so you know how many people you need in marketing, how many people you need in research, how to get people to interact together. And he said, in the agentic world, forget about that. It doesn't work that way. And he was giving me an example that, they wanted to hire someone in marketing, and they were initially thinking, instead of having a team of 40, we'll have just, one person, and he will have a big budget to manage agents. And he said, well, we kind of pushed it even further. We decided not to have this person and just have agents managing this function. And he was telling me, every morning when I wake up, I'm thinking, what is it that I'm doing that I should not be doing and that I can automate? And that's kind of, if you think about it that way, well, I think these are the companies that have disproportional return because they they think completely differently. They don't think about a typical pyramidal structure. It's like a web, a network of people working with agents, augmenting them. And so now how does it apply to drug discovery and development? So, I mean, if you think about typical pharmaceutical company, I mean, it's very structured, it's very rigid. There are lots of silos, like the data that you generate somewhere, people don't even know
that exists in the same company, and they go and buy the data somewhere else from another company because they don't know they have it. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Familiar with that.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't blame the traditional pharma company. I mean, some of them have been around for hundreds of years, and imagine the complexity. I mean, when I look at my own computer after 4 years of using it and how messy are the folder and the file.
I need an agent to clean it up for me.
Yeah, but you compound that by 100,000 employees and then do that over, 50 years or hundreds of years. And of course, then you don't even have just computer. You have like printed files and all those things. There is no way that a traditional company can leverage AI in the same way that a company that started digital, like what we call tech bio. I mean, company that started digital, they knew from the get-go that they need to produce data in a way that data is reusable. Like I would say the old way of thinking about research is very linear. I have a scientific problem, I'm thinking about my experiment, designing it, I run my experiment, do the analysis, produce data, I analyze them, I answer my question, and then I move on to the next question. And then my data, I keep them somewhere. That's it.
Yeah.
But then if you think about it in an AI way, is that the data that I produce will be used by someone else that I don't know to train a model. So it needs to be produced in such a way that it's kind of, you're creating a virtuous circle. Like you're creating a learning organization. To be able to create a learning organization, you need to produce data in a completely different way. People need to think in a different way. So, an example that I always like to take is a company like in Silicon Valley, for instance. They've been very successful at applying that, at the preclinical discovery and preclinical phase, and now they start to have.
What do they do? They're a drug company, right? A pharmaceutical company.
It's the poster child of a tech bio. So you have pharmaceutical companies. Then the next wave of innovation was biotech, and now that's what we call tech bio. It's kind of taking things and putting tech in front of bio.
First.
Why? Yeah,
to power bio.
Exactly. And the way they do things is that a lot of them, when they started, they didn't even have a lab. They were like, we can have data, we can get data from somewhere, from public sources, or working with a CRO that produce data for us. Then what we do is we develop models, and then we will take the data, do some prediction, then get a lab to do the next experiment for us, feed the data back in our model, and then make some adjustment based on, all the real live data matching what we predicted. Or if they are not, then it means that something was missing in our model, and we can learn and we can improve. And then over time, those companies started to be like, well, I want to have my own lab. But then how do I design a lab in a modern way? Well, a lot of them, they have autonomous lab or semi-autonomous lab. So there is a lot of robotics. And the most modern iteration of that is, well, I can get the models working directly with the lab. So it's kind of a digital physical bridge. Because I actually wrote about that you can think about science as two types of things. There is something which is kind of an optimization and something which is discovery. You always hear people, human in the loop. And whenever I hear human in the loop, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying human in the loop is not the right thing to do for everything. So what is human in the loop first? Human in the loop is that you have models, models that are working and proposing some direction, but then you always have a human to say, hey, you will do this, not that.
A bottleneck that needs to make a decision.
Well, that's kind of the pessimistic way, say a bottleneck. Maybe the thing is the more positive way is like, well, we want human to decide on every important stuff. But then I always argue that in some cases, you don't really want human to touch it because, it's very well known that a lot of the experiments in life science are not reproducible. I think it's been published everywhere. I think there was a famous Amgen paper from several decades ago where they looked at oncology paper, and I think 60% of the experiments were not reproducible. Then a few years ago, Nature also did a survey of life scientists in academia and in the industry and said something similar, 60% or 70% of the experiments were not reproducible. So imagine if you have an optimization experiment. So what do I mean by an optimization experiment? Let's take an example. You have a cell line and you want to find the ideal condition to grow the cell. So what does it mean? Is that you need to find the right medium. The right medium will be a mix of, bunch of salt and liquid. So maybe you have like 4 parameters, like the different concentration of the different salt, different pH, different temperature. So if you want to do that then you need to create what is the experimental universe where you have to test things, and where you do it, you need to do it in the optimal mathematical way. So there is an optimal mathematical way. You can't test every single experiment because there could be hundreds of thousands or millions of experiments. But what you want to do is make sure that you test enough experiments that you could sample the experimental space in the ideal way. And computers are much better than us, to do things, to sample things in the right way. I mean, when I was doing my PhD, in many ways, when you do, when you try to create crystals of protein, because that's what you need to do to be able to solve the crystal structure. The first thing is to grow a crystal. Growing a crystal is something that takes years because, like finding the right conditions, you have to sample thousands and thousands of conditions. And I remember when I was doing it, it was really a brute force approach. I mean, you have a robot. So initially we were doing things manually, but then luckily we got a robot. We were trying experiment after experiment after experiment, and we were not really thinking too much. Like, did I use the right combination of salt at the right temperature and at the right condition? We're just kind of
going through all the variables that you
going through all the kit we could buy, and there was way more intelligent method to follow. And to be honest, this is the type of thing where it can and should be autonomous, because I think this is really the type of thing where you don't need a lot of creativity. It's really following, like a mathematical approach. Now, it's a different story when the very question you want to ask is unclear. Like you want to do something, you want to research a certain area, but even expressing the question is difficult. So that's the difference between optimization and complete discovery. And I think the complete discovery is still where we are. There are examples where AI starts to be actually really good at discovery, and I can talk about that later on. But I think it's still where the human involvement is very important. But like I kind of diverting because we were talking about silicon.
Yeah,
why
in silicon medicine, why are they
so
a
good
success
is because
story?
I think they've been able to use AI at so many stages of drug discovery and development. So, when people talk about an AI developed drugs, it's the definition is very unclear. But my own definition of what is an AI developed drug would be a drug that comes out of a program where AI was involved in significant, in a significant part of the value added of the discovery. From either finding more information about the disease biology, identifying the target of targets, being involved in the design of the drug, being involved in the prediction of the efficacy and toxicity of the drugs, being involved in the design of the clinical phases. And in silico being, like a tech bio, they are still relatively young. They managed already to move a number of assets to clinical phases. I'm pretty sure that either this year or maybe next year or a year later, they will manage to have approved drugs, because there is no real AI developed drugs that is marketed at the moment. So if you look into the literature, you will see that there are maybe 1 or 2 drugs that are called AI developed drugs that are AI that are on the market. But if you scratch the surface, then you realize these are repurposed drugs. So a repurposed drug is a drug that was used against a different disease, that developed against a different disease that has been repurposed for another disease. So AI can be used for that, but then for me it's a bit difficult to say, is this really an AI developed drug? No, AI was involved in repurposing. Yeah. But in silicon medicine, I think it's different because they have a number of drugs that really like fit the definition that I gave of what is an AI developed drugs, and where they really did a lot of work. And where in silico medicine is really interesting and quite unique is that a lot of the stages that take several years, they were able to compress it to months. So if you look at, I think now on average, we can go through discovery and preclinical stages in 18 months, when normally it takes 5 to 6 years. So they've been able to demonstrate that they are able to do that. Now, again, I mean, people who are, let's call that AI septic, they will say, well, but they still haven't brought any drugs to the market. And to be fair, that's true. That's true. They haven't brought any drugs to the market. Now, what I will say is, well, if you look at, the traditional drug discovery and development pipeline, is that other company will take 5 or 6 years to go through a similar stage. And since we have 95% failure
there's still no guarantee that they're going to bring anything.
They will fail, but they will fail after 5 or 6 years instead of failing after 18 months. So I'd rather fail after 18 months.
See, I want to highlight that because it's a slogan in the drug development world. Oh, you need to fail fast. But nobody's doing anything with the tools that we have to actually fail fast. Like what you are, this example you're giving, and if they have something approved, amazing. But if they don't, they have managed to fail so much faster and go through so much more of this process with AI tools, right? This failing fast is there forever. And it's kind of like, oh, let's do it faster, better to fail fast, even if you don't succeed. But it's kind of like a slogan that doesn't really resonate with people because they hold on to this hope that, oh, if it's so far in the pipeline, there is a higher probability that it's going to get approved, but there's no guarantee, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think if we are honest about where we stand today with AI in drug discovery and development, we've had a number of successes in accelerating some phases, but if the ultimate success is actually bringing drug faster to patients, we haven't done that yet. I'm still very hopeful, and I think we have a lot of strong positive signal that it will happen. But one thing though, where I will be like, I'm still surprised that we don't see more AI developed drugs in clinical phases. So there was a paper from the Boston Consulting Group that tried to look systematically at how many AI developed drugs were in clinical phases, and it was I think 67 drugs in end of 2023. I worked with an AI researcher, Elliot Greenblatt, and we actually were writing a paper on that at the moment, which I hope we will be able to publish soon. Where we so I asked him the question, and then he used all the tools that he had developed and the methodology to actually take the initial data set from this paper and look what happened 28 months later. And I was really thinking, okay, with all the investment that we had in AI for drug discovery and development, we must have 300, 400 drugs. We found only 6 or 7 more. I was like, how come? I was really, really surprised. And then, there are lots of potential explanation why. If you look at the initial list of 67 drugs, some actually failed. A lot of them change ownership because a lot of the tech buyers, they will take the drugs only so far. And then, when the assets start to be interesting, then it moves to a more traditional pharma that has the scale to take it to the next stages. Because
that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm
That's
not saying
a good
that large
point.
pharma don't have sorry, just to finish on this thing, I think I'm not saying that large pharma don't have a place. I think, that Dave Ricks, the CEO of Eli Lilly, was saying, look, large pharma, there is something that...
Eli Lilly is partnering with so many people. I get alerts. Eli Lilly did this. Eli Lilly did that in AI space. And this is what, let you finish your thought, and then I'm going to pick up my thought.
We'll go back to that. But what he was saying in a very interesting podcast, he was saying, look, there is a place where scale plays a role that, you can't replace with anything. In clinical trial, scale is still very important because you need to manage a very complex supply chain problem. And this says, for commercial, when you're a multinational, with sales force, everywhere in the world, then say that's something that you can't really copy if you're a small company. So, however, he also said that scale doesn't really work in the R&D. Like there is no positive, there is actually a negative correlation between the bigger your R&D site and the least efficient. And that's why he started a lot of partnership with tech bios and AI companies, and he's also trying to bring AI within Eli Lilly. And of course, I mean, he's doing the smart thing now. Their stock price is so high, they have so much cash, they are so successful that it gives them the mean to invest in a lot of things and to experiment in many directions, and to make them more future proof, because you never know how long you will be successful and how long you will be able to generate so much.
You can ride the wave, keep riding the wave.
No, exactly.
Right?
So they are really riding the waves, and to be honest, I think they are doing a lot of the right thing. And he's a very, very interesting guy to follow, because I really like his view on the industry, and he can take like a very complex problems and making it understandable for everyone. Because like you and I, we know relatively well a corner of this industry. I mean, he's a CEO, so he has to know, he
knows the whole thing.
Good enough understanding of end to end.
And it shows a pattern, because I'm seeing that in other pharma companies with acquisitions, and we're going to talk about the specific acquisition in the digital pathology space. But what it kind of follows the pattern that you just outlined. The top of the funnel is where there's a lot more AI. You have tech bio that thinks differently. Bottom of the funnel is regulated, less AI, more scale needed to execute. And the pattern that I'm seeing, those people those pharma companies that are successful at the bottom of the funnel, which, have multiple pipelines, multiple drugs approved, they are now partnering with companies that think differently, with the tech bio companies, or like trying to bring it in, doing some kind of acquisitions, which means it's good leverage, I see, because trying to restructure, like you said, a company that is like 100 years old, the first company that's like family led that comes to my mind is Boehringer Ingelheim. They are so traditional, right? And for a good reason, and it served them well, and it keeps serving them well in a specific in this specific part of the funnel, right? But to capitalize on what's happening outside of their organization, these like external satellite partnerships, where there's this synergy. Okay, you can run a lot of R&D on a low budget and only actually run wet experiments that cost more money, that are super specific because you already modeled and predicted so many things. And then, once it works, the giant can pick it up and synergize, and then take it towards the end of the funnel. And like you said, there's a lag. What did you say? 7 drugs that were like AI powered that were approved? Not
approved, but that moved to clinical phase. So it's not even approved.
Clinical. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. So we don't see that, but also I always say, there's no guarantee that you're going to find this biology, right? There's no guarantee that there's more ways to cure these diseases. The lack of guarantee should not preclude you from trying. One thing that I like a lot in the digital pathology space are the computational pathology biomarkers. So I'm referring to the TROP2 biomarker, where you don't quantify the IHC. It's a non-small cell lung cancer, and the test relies on a normalized membrane ratio of the IHC marker to what's in the cytoplasm. So a pathologist looks at it, sees the cells, but no way will anybody calculate visually a ratio, which I love, because you hit the hard limit of visual physiology. Everything that was before PD-L1, HER2, all the other biomarkers, IHC-based biomarkers, where basically the question was, is there a lot in the right space? Is there a lot in the tumor or not? Was a visual guesstimation by a pathologist. Now we reached a little, it's a simple calculation, right? But it cannot be done. It cannot be guesstimated visually, which to me as a believer in digital pathology means, yes, we found something where we need to digitize. That ties back into, you said, okay, people didn't think the data should be reusable. And now a histopathology slide is a piece of data that everybody wants to be reusable, because you can do a lot with the image now with computer vision, with AI-powered computer vision. So anyway, but long story short, the collaborations of tech bio with the classical pharma, I like that a lot. And I think that, like you said, smart people are overseeing this in the giants and are on the lookout how to leverage things without having to test them themselves.
Yeah. And also, to be fair, I think a lot of this is happening also within pharma, within large pharma. Mm-hmm. But it just takes more time. So I think it's also hedging your bets, like transforming from the inside, but it will take more time. Yep. While working with companies that already have a working model and from which you can learn. I was at a panel discussion with a guy from Roche recently. And he was telling me that in his group they are making 100 million predictions per. I think it was per month. It was crazy. But I mean, the number looks gigantic, and it is a big number. But if you do like virtual screening, of course you will have millions of molecules. So you kind of come up with lots of big numbers pretty quickly. But then it means that when you do so many predictions, it's not doing POCs anymore. I mean, you have that working in production. By production, I mean really production in the sense of like a digital company will talk about production. It means it's part of your standard workflow. Likewise, I was at a meeting, it was another public meeting, and someone from AstraZeneca was explaining how often they had hundreds of predictive models that they were using in the company for a number of stuff. And they were explaining how often they are updating those models, and a lot were updated on a daily basis, which shows also the maturity level of those companies. Because in the past, we're updating things, digital tools on a daily basis is what Google will do, or Amazon. So it's really like the way a tech company will think about that. So it means that in pharma companies now you have like entire part of pharma companies that are working like a technology company. That have people that could have decided, I'm going to work for Amazon, Google, whatever. But no, exactly. I decided to work for a pharma company because I think the mission might be more interesting than creating yet the next website to buy stuff or a social network. I'd rather create drugs and then use technology to create drugs.
Yeah. And it's maybe it explains a little bit why there was not really anything on the and correct me if I'm wrong if you know about something, but I've been hearing at conferences from Google representatives that there is so much happening on the Google Health side. I don't see anything in the press, but like you just said, I see a lot of these tech bio acquisitions by pharma or some kind of pivot. So I want to, because you mentioned Roche, I want to mention the recent acquisition. Roche acquired Path AI, and it was a 1 billion acquisition. And we have this big pharma and we have this pathology startup that part of their services was actually serving pharma. So this is something that is not so native for pathology startups because they are more like diagnostically inclined and making the life of diagnostician easier. This particular company, and I've been like following this company, Path AI, for several years, like they were working with pharma. So that means, okay, they know workflows, they know pain points, they know the direction, and they found a partner that did enough meaningful work for them to lead to this huge acquisition. Obviously, not all the acquisitions are that successful. If somebody was following Page AI acquisition, also, big milestones achieved by a startup, the acquisition wasn't that successful. But yeah, this is AI, digital pathology, drug development, which is pretty interesting for my digital pathology trailblazers. But do you have any opinions on this deal? Like, why now? And what does this mean that this was this price tag particular? And I do want to contrast it with the Page acquisition, and feel free to give me your opinion on that, because I don't know why.
So first of all, I just want to, before we talk about that, I just want to correct one thing on the Google Health thing. Because if you look at Google, it's part of Alphabet. And, the example that I was giving with AlphaFold before in DeepMind, Google DeepMind created a spin-off, which is called Isomorphics Lab. Isomorphic Labs belong to Alphabet, and they just got another round of investment of 2.4 billion. So they are, it's a massive.
Oh, then this 1 billion deal is nothing.
No, and then
sorry, how could I have underestimated Google? I'm sorry, they just
to give Google the credit they deserve. I mean, they are. I think that's actually, as much as I like in silico medicine, and I think silico medicine is incredible, and they have a really great pipeline. DeepMind and now Isomorphics. I mean, they have two guys who won Nobel Prize in chemistry, as part of their staff, developing algorithms.
Okay. The Nobel Prize, let me give you a pushback on this, because I was working at Definiens. Definiens had a Nobel Prize winner as a founder. They didn't do as well as the Google companies. So Nobel Prize, they were acquired by AstraZeneca, so it kind of fits the pattern, but they didn't do as well as Google. And they were founded at the same time as Google.
No, but my point here is that they have a staff which is quite unique in their insight and like the brain power around developing unique models, AI models for life science. I don't think that there is a lot of other tech bio that actually do fundamental research in developing AI models. A lot of them, they will use models that have been published, that are open source, and combine them in very clever ways. But I think Isomorphic Lab, I mean, they do things like unlike any other company. I mean, that being said, they are still quite new. They don't have drugs on the market. But this is one of the companies that I'm following quite closely, because I think the way they see is different enough that it deserves, spin-offs. But moving back to AI,
the acquisition,
Pathology, and then the Roche. So first of all, I think, the interesting thing with AI in pathology is that one of the first modern application of AI, not in pathology or anything, but, it was image recognition. So, some of the guys that got the Turing Prize, which is kind of a Nobel in AI, in the AI world, people who were some of the initial research staff at OpenAI, they worked on the algorithm for image recognition. And in the end, what is pathology? It's image recognition.
Using pattern recognition.
Exactly, using AI to recognize pattern. And I think that's one of the area where AI is the most mature at the moment, is in pattern recognition. So AI, pathology was, one of the best area to apply AI in our field. So that's the first thing.
It's an image-based science, image-based medical specialty.
No, I think the thing that is quite unique with Roche, there are a number of things that are unique with Roche. It's a great company. They've been doing reorganization for a couple of years to be more AI ready. There are always a number of ranking of what is the most AI ready pharma company. Think about it what you want, ranking in the end, people tend to look at them and but Roche,
search engine optimization.
Yeah, exactly. But Roche, has always been in the top of those rankings, and I think the last ranking that I looked at, Roche was at the top. So that's one thing. I think they really understood that they need to do a lot of things to change, to make AI work for them, and to make a large pharmaceutical company prepared and ready to leverage AI. That's one thing. On the gene and tech side, there is a very prominent academic researcher who started to work with them years ago, and now is part of gene and tech. Her name is Aviv Regev. And Aviv Regev pioneered the lab in the loop approach. The lab in the loop, that's what we describe. It's like you start in silico, you produce a list of results. So if you look in terms of compound, for instance, you will make a list of compounds, then you will test them, produce data, get the data back into the algorithm, adjust the algorithm, make another prediction, and you do that so she's really one of the person who pioneered this approach, and Roche is one of the most prominent pharma companies. Third thing, so ranking, lab in the loop. Third thing is that Roche is not just pharma, it's diagnostics as well. They have those two divisions.
Exactly.
They are a very, very big diagnostic company. So I think this is where, this acquisition makes a lot of sense. Roche has always been, at the forefront of using data in pharma, using AI. They have those two divisions. So we can leverage an acquisition like that in so many areas. We can leverage it in the diagnostic division. We can leverage it in their pharma division. So that's why when I saw it, I was like, hey, kind of makes sense. I'm not sure exactly what they will do about it. Will they integrate it into...
We'll see. We're going to be looking.
Yeah, will they integrate it as part of their offering in medtech or diagnostic? Maybe. Will they leverage this as part of what they do in pharma? Well,
I hope to get them on the podcast and ask this team, like, what is it going to be? Because I'm super curious.
I want to get so many people from the podcast for so many things. I mean, they do great stuff. They are not also recently...
Maybe we need to do some kind of panel or a joint thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said. I had a guy that was responsible for MLOps. Great guy. Super smart and funny at the same time. So, the kind of best type of person you can have on a podcast. So, yeah, I mean, they are great.
Okay, so, yeah, AI, fantastic. But what can go wrong? And something already went wrong. So, and we mentioned this, like, documentation, that's like the easiest way to use AI to create documentation. And that's what one company did. And they get an FDA warning letter about not really reading through what they produce. So let me give you a little story from yesterday. So I'm writing a couple of publications right now, and obviously heavily AI powered. I try to maximize the use of these tools, and I also force myself to read through it, right? And yesterday I discovered that Microsoft Word can read this stuff to it. It was like the 5th time that I had to go through this paper, and I'm like, I cannot look at it anymore. Can somebody read it to me? And sure enough, Microsoft Word can read it to me. Well, poor Olea did not use that feature. And they got this FDA warning letter to specifically call out AI misuse. And this is a cosmetic lab. And, I feel bad to highlight, but that's an example. It's not that, it's something you're gonna run against, and if you don't have hard guardrails, then you can end up like them, that they used ChatGPT for QC documents and didn't verify it, submitted to the FDA, and basically FDA said, well, you produced it with whichever tool, you're responsible, so here's the letter and don't do it again. Well, what does it tell us about where the regulators are drawing the line? That's one thing, and kind of straightforward, like if you produced it, that's your fault. But second, what are the guardrails that we have to implement? Especially in the regulated environment, right? And the moment you mention the abbreviation FDA, you are either in or heading towards regulated environment.
But I think you said it, whatever you submit to the FDA, you need to make sure that you read it twice or 3 times,
right. But that's kind of a general principle of AI, right? Whatever you put on social media. Oh, there was another story. I don't know. I don't remember who, but somebody before a conference from a pretty respected company decided that they're going to amplify their presence at the conference and published an AI-generated graphic. And the comments like, oh, looks AI-generated. This is wrong. That is wrong. This company is wrong. It's like they didn't read. Read and verify. This is so simple. And yet, at this high level, it's not happening.
Yeah.
Is it sad? Is it normal? What do you think?
Yeah. No, I mean, to be fair, so I won't throw a stone at people and not talk about stupid stuff I've done, in the past. I mean,
I did my share of stupid stuff as well.
I've done something similar in the past, but again, I mean, the stakes were quite low because it was a LinkedIn post. And in the LinkedIn post, like I took, there was a table from a few years ago, and then a table for a similar theme, but a few years later, and I asked the AI model, hey, tell me, compare those two tables, and then tell me, which company went up, which company went down. Gave me a great graphic. I posted it, and I was like, hey, look, I mean, it's quite cool. And then someone was like, there are a few strange things in your thing, like this company wasn't there. And then I started to look at it, and I was like, holy shit, I mean, it's all made up. But it was so well made up that I was like, I did it quick and dirty, wrote a quick story, and then posted it without checking. And then I was like, well, that's my fault. I mean, I'm 100% responsible for not checking that. Now, the difference is that it's not something that I sent to a regulator.
That's true. You did not send your LinkedIn post to the FDA?
No, I didn't.
Good for you.
But that's the thing, I still should have done that, because then you're a professional, you're doing something publicly, you are 100% responsible for what you publish and where you put your name in. Whoever does it, whether it's a human, whether it's a colleague, it's an intern, it's a contractor, or an AI. And now I think the problem with AI is that it tends to do things extremely convincingly. So the other day I did the same thing, but this time, it didn't do it publicly. I used the AI to create a list, and then I looked at it quickly, and I was like, oh, it looks great, and I sent it to a colleague, and I said, hey, look at the list. I mean, it's really nice. I mean, it was able to pick up new stuff, and then I sent it to him by email, and then I started to look more at the list, and I'm like, I sent him an email, and I said, just delete my email. It's complete bullshit.
The email,
but it was so well done and so convincing. And I think this is the biggest problem with a lot of AI at the moment, is that it still hallucinates quite a lot in very convincing manner. So some, like where it accelerates your workflow, it's in the production of information. Where it's slow your workflow is that you need to spend more time reviewing things. So, in the past, you were creating, so maybe you were obviously taking more time creating something, right? And you knew more what we're going in. And then rereading your stuff was faster. Now, the creation is like really compressed in a few minutes, but then the checking can take way longer, because sometimes you have things that are so credible that you can miss them. And I think this is the biggest danger. But going back to this company, there was another example, like a couple of years ago when ChatGPT just started. I don't know if you remember the story. There was a lawyer that was arguing a court case, and all the what's the name that you use in the legal term? It's example of previous judgment. There is a legal name for that. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer. Yeah, precedents. All the precedents, all the jurisprudence was completely made up. And the guy, I think the judge found out, and the guy got in big trouble. And for me, it's very similar to this example with the FDA, is that whatever you use and submit in a high-stake environment, you need to check it. And I'm sorry, I know it's bad with this FDA, especially with the FDA, because in the end, it's linked to human health. So, I mean, whatever you do, you need to be responsible and check. I'm sorry. There is no excuse.
I'm glad they did. I'm glad because they had their own adventures with AI on their end, but that's their job. But also this problem, and I had another guest on the podcast, a colleague of mine, a veterinary pathologist, Candice Chu, and she says, yeah, this made up stuff, the references that are made up, I'm guilty of that as well. That was a 2023 problem, not a 2026. Like, everybody now is aware of the limitation that it can make up things. And all these problems that we're discussing right now is basically, not checking what you produced with the tool that you produced it with. So kind of simple. And I was covering the National Comprehensive Cancer Network conference on AI, using AI. And the main theme was, guardrails built into the tool. And, in the consumer AI tools, you can already upload skills, ways of doing things. You can ban AI from inventing stuff. You can ask it to get everything from the source. And, I have all that already in place for my scientific writing project in Claude. And sure enough, I did go through all my references and 2 of them were incorrect. Not like majorly incorrect, but I did have to manually correct that. So, a non-negotiable. Either you do it or somebody else does it. Mm-hmm.
If you were to write without AI, would all your references be 100% correct? I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Well, imagine
what does that mean, correct? Because I would not invent them. How am I going to invent a title of a paper?
A lot of the thing that I get wrong at the moment is not necessarily the reference itself, but the link. Link to the page.
That's a common thing.
That tends to be at the moment, especially with Claude. I mean, Claude got excellent for. I mean, absolute love with Claude. But when it gives me references, in general, the reference exists and is good. But then if I tell him, at the end of his paper, you will build, the references, and you will write it and then put a link. Sometimes the link is wrong. So, I checked everything.
Yeah, so
and
then, that was the case. That was my problem.
Yeah, I have to correct a few things. And that's my point. If I was doing things manually, I'm sure I would get a couple of wrong.
Stuff would slip in there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing also, we have a tendency to judge, to be more harsh with AI. We want AI to be absolutely perfect. And what I always argue with people saying that is like, are you always perfect? Are your colleagues always perfect? No, I mean, nothing is perfect. I love
that you can be so harsh with AI because then you don't have to hedge. So I'm using this. You can basically instead of yelling on my kids, I yell on at my AI. Oh, it's not doing what I want to do.
My daughter does the same. Sometimes she's using. I should not say that, but sometimes she's using ChatGPT to help her with homework, and then she's talking to it. She doesn't type, she talks. And then sometimes she's yelling at me. She's like, ChatGPT, you're stupid. This is not what I asked you.
Exactly.
It's incredible if we start to talk about it like that.
I know, because I have this software. It's called Whisper Flow that lets you basically dictate everything. I love it. It's like a game changer. Anyway, so it makes an analysis. What's the tone you're speaking? What are the, how many words per month? And also, what's the most common word that you're using? Guess what's my most common word that I'm using?
Is it a swear word?
No.
I don't know.
It's the word don't. Because it does something. I'm like, don't do this, don't do that, don't repeat myself. You were supposed to do it correct the first place. Why don't you go to Google Drive on your own? Why are you telling me to search for something manually? Anyway, so don't is the main word that I'm using with my AI. But yeah, so now that we're talking about the tools that we're using, I obviously I'm like, let me just pay for the subscription, right? $20 for ChatGPT and Claude now became $200 a month because I wanted more tokens and to write more and, whichever tool. And it felt so low price entry. Myself, I see that okay, not every tool is gonna fulfill your every requirement and help you build the workflow. So, which next tool? So then I buy a subscription for another tool, and then I run out of token. So I upgrade this tool subscription. And I'm like, next month I'm gonna downgrade. I did not downgrade yet. So let's talk about the price.
Yeah, and
trying AI and how much it costs to try it out and will it work or not.
Yeah, it's the same because now I'm for instance, I have subscription to personal subscription and work subscription to Claude and ChatGPT, so both personal and work.
Yeah, I have for my business. Yes,
personal. I also have Gemini. I don't have
Gemini. Yes.
Yeah,
you do
I have Gemini because it's I use the free version. For some reason I never. Yeah. For Gemini, it's also because it's linked to Google Drive. Yeah. So now I have 5
But you have to pay for whatever terabyte you pay. In one way or another, you pay. Mm-hmm.
Then you're using Riverside for podcasts. I'm using Descript.
Riverside, and Whisper Flow.
Now now I got, I was looking for an excuse to buy a big camera. So now I have, for my podcast, I have this big camera.
Okay.
It's great. It's great. But
Podcast
now
is a great excuse.
I'm reading.
I have to edit videos.
Yeah, but now I have 4K, and I realized, if you want to use 4K with the script, you need to upgrade your subscription. I'm like,
oh, really? Okay.
You must be kidding me. Yeah, there was $100 per year more now. I'm like, seriously. And that's the thing, so for ChatGPT now, I'm always on the verge of, dropping the subscription, but there are a few things that
but
I really like.
It makes pretty good images, I have to say.
The images are great, and you using WhisperFlow for me, the voice to text is with Whisper is actually from OpenAI, so I use ChatGPT for that. And my wife really likes ChatGPT, so I'm like, okay, I still need a subscription.
ChatGPT stays, I know.
Yeah, the thing that I'm worried about is everyone is talking about the fact that the prices will significantly increase. Because the way I'm thinking about OpenAI, Anthropic, all those companies, they are like digital drug dealers. They gave you your fix of tools for very small price, and like $20. And then, then you're hooked because you do everything with that. And then at some point you will be like, you know what, actually, you've been paying $20, but for us, it costs us much more. So now price will increase like 5 times, 10 times.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. I was on a 20 and then I had to write a lot and not even blink of an eye to upgrade to 200.
Yeah. Yeah, because you get value. I mean, that's the thing, but then even if you're 200, there are some, forecasts saying that it will go significantly higher. And I think this is where, have you ever tried DeepSeek?
Not yet.
DeepSeek is the Chinese model. And when I tried the last version, the V3, now they're at the V4. I haven't tried the V4 yet, but the V3, I remember, was fantastic. At that time, it was really the best model. They just released the V4 and they decreased the price by 75%. Now, the only company I know that decreased the price, why? Because since it's a Chinese company...
What do they want from you? They want your data, probably.
Oh, well, because the other one, they don't want your data. I mean, we can...
everybody wants your data, that's true.
We can talk a lot about the ethics of all the AI companies. I think that's an entirely different discussion.
Yeah, that's a philosophical discussion.
But then I think also, a lot of people, including myself, have been using AI for a lot of simple things and, not in the most efficient manner. And I think as the prices will increase, we'll have to be much smarter. What is it that we use it for? Yeah. Which model are we using? Are we using it in an efficient manner? So for instance,
let me tell you, there's going to be AI that's going to do this for you and you're gladly paying.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I think there will be at some point like a layer of AI that decide, hey, if you want to rewrite an email, you don't need Opus 4.8.
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
need that. If you want to
there already is. I'm listening to different podcasts and, they tell you the best is like a YouTube video about how to do everything for free with Claude or whatever, like for little money with Claude. And then a sponsor is this like AI orchestrator that lets you use 27 different models for all different purposes and decides for you what's the best. And there is another subscription on that.
Yeah. But then, I think there are people also who will say, look, at some point, you might want to have something installed locally and run open source models if you're technical enough. I mean, the computer has... So yesterday, I think there was an NVIDIA conference in Taiwan where they talked about new laptop chips that will be able to run a lot of things locally. So, things are evolving so fast that I think, what we see as a limitation now might not be a limitation in 6 months. But if imagine the price increased by 10 times tomorrow, then, we need to be very creative. We need to think about which model to use, using smaller models, using things more efficiently, not using it for rewriting email, today, for instance, I'm uploading pictures and PowerPoints and PDFs, and I just put everything. It's
everything.
Inefficient. And then, when I started using Claude, at 9:30 in the morning, I will run out of token, and then I will have to send an email to an administrator saying, hey, can you give me more
tokens?
And now I'm like, okay, I stopped being stupid. I stopped uploading 10 documents I'm not uploading a PDF, but a markdown document, because I started to read what to do when you're running out of token after an hour.
See,
Like,
you're good.
we need to think about the type of document you're reading. Then you need to think like a computer scientist. What are documents that are more computationally efficient? All sort of things that, to be honest, I mean, we were not trained to think about that, but at some point you need to get educated about it, because that's the world we are living in now.
You need to learn, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, but that's quite cool.
Yeah, I know. So what would you recommend at the drug development scale, how to get involved with AI? And on the other side, okay, consumer of AI. And we kind of started, okay, you need to be a little bit more savvy, but like where we sit right now, when you run out of tokens at 9 a.m. already, or where like the experimenting phase for free, what do we do? Do we get more AI? Do we get different AI? One accusation, and people from the computer science world are like accusing of measuring the gain that they are not really return on investment, but the the more you use it, the better, right? The goal in some of these companies is, if you're not using enough, then you're not maximizing its potential. Use more to get rid of human labor. Any final thoughts on the new way of using AI in drug development and as a consumer?
It's such a broad and complex topic, but I would say potentially yes, like using more, but it's not just more, it's better. It's being smarter on how you use it. It's not just copying what you would do and just putting AI instead, but it's thinking differently. It's the example I was giving you about this CEO who says, I need to unlearn a lot of things and then relearn how to do it in the agentic world. What is it that I can outsource? What is it where I don't need to be the one doing it, deciding? What is it that I can automate and let an AI decide potentially without me being involved all the time? Because I think there would be also one thing, a new disease like agentic burnout. Like Jetson Young, the CEO of NVIDIA, was saying, with agents, agent will harass you. They will, ask you for feedback all the time. And I see that, when I use
Claude does that. It tells you such a huge message for like one little question. Like,
exactly.
I need to rewrite the skills.
I kind of like how Claude does, but sometimes it's almost too much. And I'm like, okay, when I talk to someone, when I have a dialogue, maybe I do. I talk for 10 minutes, but sometimes
we can analyze this podcast. How many? What percentage of time? No, don't worry.
But yeah, I think things will evolve, and they are collecting so much data that I'm pretty sure they are. I'm sure that they are evolving the tool, and they have in the history of digital tools the best understanding of user behavior. Because like the difference with Google, in Google, you used to search like one word or short sentence. Here, you write your whole life in these things. So like the context they have is like unlike anything else. So the tools are evolving super fast. But if you're talking about that in the context of organization of pharma companies, I think you can't just give access to your researcher and expect them to be efficient. It's part of such a big transformation program. You need to start small, get early win, scale, train your people. There is a huge investment in upscaling people and getting technologists and data people together with scientists. Telling scientists to change the way they work and always been working is almost impossible. Some of them will be, into it enough that they've done the work themselves, but a lot of them will be skeptical, and because we've been trained to be skeptical. So unless you put in place the right change program in the organization, you won't see any ROI because you will have resistance. And then you will say, those scientists, they're old school. it's not their fault. I mean, it's you're changing a complex organization where people always think about the guardrail, like the fact that we work in regulated environments. So it's not just, using tool because it's food and everything. It's working tool in a very serious business where the consequences are high, they're expensive. We are developing things for human health. So all those things are important, and scientists have all that in mind. So changing the way they work means that you need to have comprehensive programs in place and bring them in a journey. And I think that's also one of the reasons why changing things in pharma is complex, because it's a very complex environment. But I think a lot of the pharma companies, they decided, okay, let's bring some of those companies that have done it from the get-go, the tech bios, let's work with them. And I think what will happen is what we've seen with biotech. Biotech got acquired by large pharma. We would see tech bio being acquired by large pharma. At the moment, they have strategic collaboration. Eventually, they would be acquired, and then there would be, like an excellent center of AI drug discovery and development. And several years from now, things will start to be, like in the organization. They will have learned from that. They will hire profiles of people that we normally don't have, more technologists. They would have more people who, as I said earlier in the podcast, could have worked at Amazon, Google, whatever, but are working in pharmaceutical environment. So that's what I think would happen.
Interesting. So do you have, before we wrap up, the most annoying quirk of any of the AI tools that you're working with? I have one specific one that I
What is the most annoying? Well, I think it's you mentioned the word don't. I trained Claude to on my specific style of writing. I went on the hunt of all the content that I have written before AI. So I went to my old emails. Yeah, I took my PhD. That I wrote. My PhD is the longest piece of thing that I wrote before AI, and I uploaded all of this into Claude, and I said, this is how I write. And then I said, I don't want to have too many M-dash because I don't like that. I absolutely hate when you have a sentence that say, this is not this, but this, like this.
Oh my goodness, I discovered that one. I put it in my skills. It always, I was writing a publication.
And then, so you ask, what annoys me is that when, despite all of those things, it comes back in the writing. And then I tend to really yell at it. And I say, I told you, in capital letter, I told you not to do that. And then it apologized. And I'm like, seriously.
Exactly.
So I think this one, and then, the hallucination, even though it's going down, once in a while you have something that's crazy and that should not be there. And that's getting more and more difficult to. So, the stylistic things is annoying. The hallucination, which is difficult to spot, I think is more serious. And this is the one thing where I'm like, that really annoys me, because sometimes you can quickly lose credibility if you have something which is completely hallucinated and you have it in your content.
Something.
And the fact that it's becoming more and more difficult to spot, that's something that annoys me a lot.
I have one additional thing. It's just mostly annoying. It doesn't keep track of time at all. It doesn't know what date it is, what time it is. Like, I'm in a chat and I'm like, okay, today I'm going to do this and that. And it's like, oh, you've done so much today. And I'm like, no, I've done this that you're mentioning yesterday or the day before. And it has zero context of time. I don't know if there's some button to make it time aware, that it has an internal calendar, but I didn't figure that out.
Are you working with projects? Are you working with
projects?
Projects?
Yes, projects as well.
Because for me, it worked quite well with project, where I kind of try to wrap up big project so, they call it Bible, when you start to write a super, super long thing, and it always tells me I will make your Bible. I don't know why it called it like that. And what it calls the Bible is kind of the document that kind of links all the things we've done in the project, and then the different parts of the project that I tend to do in one day by one day are kind of linked to this thing. So that's kind of how it's not necessarily keeping time, but it keeps the stages of the project. quite well, which is almost equivalent to time.
See, almost equivalent. I want the time, not almost equivalent to time.
So it's always working around. It's always working around the current limitation and quirks of it. I think that's what we learned about how to do.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me. It was so much fun talking to you. I'm definitely gonna include the papers we mentioned in the show notes. Also, your LinkedIn profile. Pretty inspired how you explain research and how you write. So let's see if I can model some of that. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Alex. I think it was fun. It's a long recording. So good luck for editing.
I know, and I need to also link to your podcast so that people can find you online. Tech and Drugs.
Cool. Thanks a lot. And let's do it again in a couple of months when you have new stuff to talk about.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Bye.